Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to catch up with me on Twitter, you can find me at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram at I Love That Movie Podcast, and we have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to support us on there, you can. That's at patreon.com/I Love That Movie. And if you do sign up, you get bonus episodes weekly of my weekly roundup. And right now we're covering Loki. So each week I have a guest on there and we cover an episode. We've also covered The Mandalorian and WandaVision. So it's a good time just for as little as $1 a month. So I want to take a moment to thank our top patrons, and they are Chris Balga, Jeff Widman, and Philip Barker, and Michael Cross. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. And if you do like what you hear today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. I have a returning guest today. I have Matthew Malice of the Polyhedron podcast on the show. Say hi.
Hello, everyone out there in movie land.
Yes, welcome back. It's been a little while. And if people haven't heard you on your previous episode, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hello, my name is Matthew Malice. I am basically the producer and one of the co-hosts for a RPG-focused podcast called Polyhedron. Been going for several years now. We've been to several conventions, both digital and in real life, even though that's coming back now, which is good.
Yes.
Also, just and generally multimedia person. I'm also helping my friend at Simulacra TV, doing some actual play recordings and broadcasts. So that's really cool.
That's awesome. I think we met at DragonCon, right? When you had your
yes.
And you actually encouraged me to start a Patreon, so thank you for that.
Yay, I'm so happy.
You were so right. But yeah, that was cool. That doesn't always happen, when you talk to a podcaster, you have them on your show and all that stuff, and then you get to meet them. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as usual, my guest always picks the movie. What movie did you choose to talk about today?
All right. This took a little bit of roundabout. I already told her a little bit of story, but
yeah.
1989's The Burbs.
Yes. So a little bit of background. We were kind of chatting before we started here. This movie has almost been chosen several times.
Mm-hmm.
Like so much so that I had to go back and look through and make sure we hadn't already talked about it, which, you brought this up a moment ago that we've covered a lot. I'm thinking about starting to bend that rule because, really, you could have more than one conversation about the same movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, it's been about 4 years now, and I think there's some that I could definitely make exceptions for. But anyway.
I know, because I looked at your list and I was like, oh, I love The Burbs. Don't worry, we're going to have a fantastic time talking about it. But there was a couple others I was like, oh, I really want to talk about that one.
And you may, and you can. So those can be future episodes. But
yeah,
with The Burbs, like I said, this has almost been chosen several times, probably for the same reason. I think it is beloved by people that have seen it, people probably around our age. But it is somewhat of a cult classic. We'll talk about it. Let me let you guys know that if this is your first time listening, we do not give spoiler warnings. This conversation is free flowing. It's going to go all over the place. So if you haven't seen this movie, I would recommend you see it. Now you're going to have trouble finding it. Something we also talked about before we started recording. It was everywhere for a while, and I don't know, probably redistribution rights or something. It is. I think it's on Vudu, and that's it.
Yeah, you can rent it on Vudu. So that's good luck. You probably can get a DVD copy of it somewhere.
Yeah, like I don't have a Blu-ray, but I have like a regular DVD copy that I bought a long time ago. And when I went through and started kind of trimming down my physical media, that movie was like, I can't let this go because I don't know if they've ever made a Blu-ray, or I knew even then that it was a little hard to find, so I held on to it. So I'm lucky.
Yeah,
Um,
you're real lucky,
yeah.
actually.
Hopefully someday it gets, put back out in
Okay,
the
good.
universe. But
Shout Factory does have a Blu-ray copy of it.
oh, thank you.
So if you want to get it, Shout Factory's got it. Look that up.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Good to know.
Yep,
And
yeah,
good
I
to know
just
for our
looked it up.
listeners. I'm probably not the only one thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering when I watched it, like how, if it would be different watching it, upscaled. But yeah. Well,
Actually, it's all very practical. I think it'd look really good,
yeah,
actually.
you're right. Because it's not like there's a lot of effects or anything. But
No,
um,
no.
so before we go any further, I'm going to read the synopsis.
Hmm.
And like I said, if you guys need to pause and come back after you've seen it, here's the synopsis of the Burbs. Settling in for some time off in his suburban home, Roy Peterson's vacation becomes a horror when the Klopeks, a suspiciously odd family, move in down the block. Enlisting the aid of his paranoid buddy Art and his militiaman neighbor Rumsfeld, Ray sends his son and wife away on a trip while he investigates the Klopeks. When a neighbor disappears, Ray and his cohorts risk their lives to save their cul-de-sac from the clutches of evil.
Oh, ugh. Oh, man, that almost spoils it a little bit.
It
Like
does.
that
Sometimes
synopsis.
summaries do that. Yes,
Yeah.
that's why I had to give that spoiler warning first. So, this was directed by Joe Dante,
Hmm.
who directed movies like The Gremlins, The Howling, Inner Space, some other classics. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
he's a well-known and well-loved director for sure.
Yeah, he is definitely a director of the '80s. Like
Yes.
all of his big movies are generally from the '80s. I mean, he does some stuff nowadays, a lot of TV actually.
Ah,
But yeah, his big movies that I remember all from the '80s. Even though I was like my teenage years were in the mid '90s, so these are all things I watched on VHS and very in Laserdisc when I was a little older.
Laserdisc. Wow, that's a flashback for sure.
My
Yeah.
parents are big cinephiles.
Oh,
My
that's
dad
so cool.
is.
I mean, it was the better quality,
Yeah, and he
format.
loved multimedia stuff, so he as soon as like when Laserdisc became a thing, he got it. When DVDs were a thing, he got it, and then even when we used Blu-rays and HDVDs were coming out, he
Yes.
actually got two players so he could figure out, like, he would have one when the other would, which depending on which one would win the formatting wars.
He was ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a couple of quick facts I wanted to share about the movie. This one had some interesting ones. The first one is that Walter's toy poodle Queenie was played by the same dog that was Precious in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, I read that earlier too, and I was
That's
like,
so funny.
really? Oh, poor dog.
I know, it seems really dark. Um, this film received the worst reviews of any movie released in 1989, according to many who worked in the film, which includes director Joe Dante, editor Marshall Harvey, and co-stars Wendy Shaw and Corey Feldman. But it was a box office success and is now deemed a cult classic.
That tells you, everyone, reviewers know nothing, everyone, because
Yeah, they're
holy
not
crap.
always right. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about this movie, like, when we talked about the fact that the director did a lot of 80s classics, it seems to hit like all those, like the funnest things about like 80s family movies in
Yeah.
this like one film. Just everything from the look of it to the cast and the humor, like it just really hits well. So maybe at the time in 1989 they were like, this is like cliche and it's like so many other
Yeah.
movies
Yeah.
like this, but in retrospect it's really, that's what makes it endearing.
Also, it's almost parody.
Yes.
It's actually almost parody when you look at it from a long enough lens at the time period. And that's, of course, they didn't get it because it wasn't a it's slap in your face parody. It was a
Yeah.
very subtle parody while also being its own thing, like being a legitimate like entertainment experience.
I agree, and I can't wait to discuss, the parody aspect of it. I love
Yeah.
that. Also, we got to mention this. The house where Ricky Butler, played by Corey Feldman, was actually where The Munsters was
Yeah,
filmed.
I looked that up too.
Yeah, and the house where Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher lived was from Leave It to Beaver.
Hmm.
And most of the houses that were on the block where the film takes place were featured in TV shows, with Desperate Housewives being the last. So I think that speaks to some of the parody you're talking about. I feel like where they're literally living in the houses of these like suburban, family TV shows, but it's sort of a, a funny look at suburban life.
Yeah, well, that's the point, right? It's in a cul-de-sac. It's encircled.
Yes.
Like it's a critique. It's a parody of like movies and television, but it's a critique of suburban lifestyle. Of like, oh, this is a community, and
Hmm.
only the community is here. Anyone outside the community is not really welcome. Like
Right.
the Klopeks are this unknown new entity in the neighborhood, and everyone is bored and goes off half cocked because that's part of the charm of this movie. If you've never watched, like, of course, I hope you've watched it because it's a good movie.
Right.
Is you don't know what the Klopeks are doing. You don't
Right.
know if they're evil. Like you don't know what's going on. So
Uh-huh.
he's just like Tom Hanks, Ray, and Mark Runsfield and his buddy and a couple other people in the neighborhood. Like, are they all just like xenophobic, paranoid neighbors that have too much time on their hands?
Right, because
Oh.
this is a trope that we recognize in real life. Like I was telling, we bought a house earlier this year, so I feel like this is the perfect time to revisit this. So we're in suburbia, but it's interesting. I told my husband that at first I didn't feel as comfortable like walking around the neighborhood
Hmm.
because, when I lived in an apartment, we had walking trails and you share it with so many people that you live with, and then we go to parks. But when you walk around the neighborhood and you just moved in, like everyone is staring at you like, who is this person? Should I
Hmm.
call the police? Like, are they going to do something? And especially when we've all had that experience where we had to like back up in a cul-de-sac and turn around. And the way like people like come out of their homes and they're like, why is someone in my cul-de-sac?
Yeah,
At
exactly.
least here in Texas.
Like
And
like they
here,
just look at you as you drive past, and you're like, what? I'm just driving here, buddy.
yeah.
Stop looking at me.
And in Texas, they could be packing heat, so you're extra
Yeah,
careful.
yeah,
Now that I've lived here for a few months, people have seen me, they wave. And not to say that everybody that I have that experience all the time, but it's just like it's a thing, when you live in a suburban community, there is that level there and it deserves to be critiqued, I think. So
yeah. Absolutely, hundred
yeah.
percent. And this is like '80s suburbia, so this is like no internet, no real anything. So in the people you know are kind of the people in your neighborhood. So and you get that right from the jump of this is like this is a what I call a true community. They know each other. They
Hmm.
they like each other and they hate each other in like equal measure. They all have some snarky comment about each other
Yes.
and like something they've done or something they will do or something just the conflict, like especially Corey Feldman's character Ricky is like this weird comic relief like observer,
Yes.
like the Greek
Almost like a
choir.
commentator. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what he does in the movie. He's sitting there going, getting all his buddies up on the roof in the house, watching the shenanigans unfold.
Yeah, like these days, this would be like a thread on Twitter or Reddit, but in this
Yeah,
movie in the '80s, he's kind of calling it all out. You mentioned the cast. We mentioned Corey Feldman, and before we started recording, we are talking about like how stacked the cast is.
yeah.
Did you want to spend some time kind of just talking
Oh, sure.
about your favorite
We'll
actors
go
in
down it.
this?
I can literally talk for an hour by myself, and I'm not trying to like push you out. Or
Not
anything.
at
This is
all.
your
Not at all. Go
podcast. I'm
ahead.
just like,
No, go for it.
so we got Tom Hanks, who's Ray Peterson. Okay, R.A. excellent '80s '90s actor all around, great guy. Bruce Dern, who plays Mark Rumfeld, which is like the like hardcore Vietnam vet.
Hmm.
He's great. There's an amazing amount of physicality, like physical comedy in this movie, and
Agree.
everyone brings it. One that always shocked me because I didn't think about it at the time until you were like, "Hey, let's do the Burbs," and I looked at the cast again. I was like, "Oh, right, Carrie Fisher's in it." Like Carrie
I
Fisher plays
know.
Carol.
For a while, I would always forget that she was in Blues Brothers too.
Yeah, True. Well, I actually knew she was in Blues Brothers. Like I got that, but like, oh, she's the wife slash mother, and she is in it for a chunk of the movie, but she's gone
Hmm.
for also a big part of it as well.
Yes.
Part of the plot. But I was like, oh, Carrie Fisher's in this, and then you had Corey Feldman, you had Rick Ducommun, I think his name.
That
Uh,
sounds right.
yeah, is he plays Art, the weird like other neighbor from another neighborhood. Like he's like, because his property, Ray's property backs up to Art's, and they're
Yeah.
friends, and they come and mess with each other all the time. So he just walks through the backyard. Uh,
Yes.
you have Wendell Shale, which I don't know what she's done. She's Bonnie Rumsfeld. She's the wife of Mark Rumsfeld. She's sort of the eye candy of the movie because
Yes.
that's like
Yes.
one of the running
Well,
jokes.
and isn't that something that you sort of stereotype with the vet? You know, it kind of reminds me of like Cotton in King of the Hill, like the
Yeah,
old vet that marries like way too young,
yeah.
sort of like a trophy wife. Yeah, yeah.
And then we got the Klopeks. We got Henry Gibson as Dr. Werner Klopek, which is like the main sort of patriarch of the family.
Yes.
Which great actor, like great classic
Yes.
actor. Theodore Gottlieb. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. He plays one of the other ones. You have Courtney Gaines, which plays the Hans Klopek, which is the really tall, orangey haired one.
Hmm.
He's like the most like iconic Klopek because you see him and he's very different than a lot of these people. Um,
Yes. I mean, he looks very like, you stumbled upon a backwoods area and it's like
yeah,
this scary family that maybe, I don't know, if there's some weirdness to their origins. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just like without
weird,
yeah.
like they speak with like somewhere in Eastern Europe accent. Like the name is Klopek, so it's like they live in a rundown house that they bought. They
Yeah.
like have like not a hearse, but a really like dingy broken car is like the
I mean,
transportation.
let's just say it, they're like vampires.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
They're
then at the same time they give off this weird like almost hillbilly vibe. At least Hans, the tall
yeah,
guy, does. Just
yeah,
reminds you of like a horror movie where you went down the wrong road and there's all these
yeah.
people living in an abandoned house. Yeah, it's just scary.
And about the cast too, the last two I really need to mention. They're only in for a part of the movie. You got Dick Miller and Robert Picardo, both
I'm
as
so glad you
garbage men.
mentioned them.
Yeah,
They
they're two.
always surprise me as an adult when I watch this. I'm like, oh, Robert Picardo.
Yeah, yeah. Robert
Yeah.
Picardo and Dick Miller, rest in peace. They have this great scene as garbage men because they're arguing about what the Klopeks didn't or did throw out, and like one like Art's digging through the back of the garbage truck and just tossing garbage on the street, and then at the end he has the audacity to say, "Well, you're garbage man. You need to pick up the garbage from the street."
Yeah, the
Like,
entitlement is unbelievable. But
yeah,
maybe that's
absolutely.
also because, this is sort of around the time period of like the middle class kind of losing their heyday. And so maybe
Yeah,
there's some like internalized animosity about that. I mean, we could dissect that, but I'm just saying like that part stood out to me like as something you would not say today to a garbage man.
yeah. It's like
So
you
rude.
went into his truck, you threw all the trash out because of your own paranoid delusion, and now you expect that guy to pick up the garbage from the street that you threw out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would
Just
never mess with the garbage man. I mean, I've seen videos of people that they do something or they sent in a complaint or something, and pretty soon their trash is like all over their lawn. It's like, take that, and I'm kind
yeah.
of like, yeah, maybe keep that to yourself. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to mention too when you first mentioned Tom Hanks. I'm gonna feel. Oh no, we talked about Big. Okay, this is our second Tom Hanks movie,
Oh
which is
yeah.
weird
Yeah.
when we've been around for so long. But yeah, this is so. I was reading about how he almost didn't want to take this part because um, he was like handsome, funny guy before
Yeah.
this, and now he's sort of transitioning into like in this movie he's a father.
Yeah.
It's more of like a middle-aged suburban role. I could see why you'd be like, well, I don't know if I want to lose my like romantic edge, but this is the start of a different phase. The same year Turner and Hooch also comes out,
Yeah,
so
this is
it
more of
really.
like the lovable everyman concept
Yes.
because Ray Peterson definitely comes off because he's schlubby throughout the entire movie. That he's just a dude, like he's just a guy in suburbia.
Yes. Yeah. Like he's a little bit better than the neighbor that's always eating all their food and stuff while
Yeah,
his wife's
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
He's got his stuff together a little bit more,
yeah.
but he's crossing into that phase of his life, even in the movie, I feel like.
So I want to bridge in because we're talking about a little bit of everything
Oh,
here.
sure, sure, sure.
I just was reckoning because I was looking at Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher. The chemistry between those two in the movie is great. Like,
Yeah, I agree.
just it's they you can tell that they really like each other and love each
Hmm.
other, but they also are a married couple for a while. They obviously have an older kid,
Yeah.
so they neg each other just a little bit. I just thought that was a very interesting look at that relationship, especially in the
Yeah.
time of like this is more of a equal relationship. Like,
Agreed. And it's mentioned in the movie, I think, by the other guys. Like
yeah,
they talk about getting your balls back and stuff. And they
oh
recognize
yeah, they do
that
because
his
Art brings us
connection
a
with
go.
her is different. Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
little more
yeah,
like evolved to where they're both more equal. And I think it's yeah, it's different from, a lot of 80s films with the husband and wife. They're kind of more it's a more like I guess like honest they have some tits and tats but it's not
hmm
mean.
hmm
It feels authentic. Yeah.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely adored their relationship for what you get because it kind of spitballs into sort of the thirdish act when she leaves and they're able to like hatch their plan.
Yeah, she's not there to like supervise
Right,
and
right. The
it goes off
boys are
the
let off the
rails.
chain and they're gonna go do stupid stuff.
I love
Uh,
that.
yeah, it's so good, so good. What else? What else? I mean, there's so much. There's
I know.
literally so much.
I was gonna say too, when you were talking about the vibe of like the neighbors sort of loving and hating each other. I mean, I think it sounds a lot like family, right? Where it's
Yeah,
like they have this connection where it's sort of like that guy pisses me off. He does this, this, and this. He's sloppy. I don't like his yard or whatever. But he's my guy that I don't like his yard. Like
yeah,
they really treat each other like family.
yeah.
And that's
Like
what makes the Klopeks like such an invasion, as you
because
mentioned.
like Walter, which is kind of the guy we don't know a whole lot about. He just has the dog that poops in everyone's yard. Um.
That made my dog go insane, by the way, when I was watching it. There were so
Oh.
many dogs in this movie, which makes sense, but it was driving her crazy. I kept having to like make sure she didn't break my TV.
Oh, yeah, but like Walter's like he's kind of kind of a nastier old guy.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, no one likes him, but they like try to quote unquote avenge him or come to his rescue of like,
Yes.
oh, the Klopex did something to him. We need to break into his house and figure out what's going on. And they just come up with these half-cocked ideas based on what happened when it just happened when they were in the middle of the night. He got taken to the hospital because he had a heart attack. But
Right.
they decided to like, and then they write the note, Walter, I have your dog.
I love that. And it's very like rear window-ish, right?
Yeah.
Or and that part of it is really fun, but then it's like, what if that person was enabled by their less intelligent friends,
They're
which is
negged.
great. Yeah.
They're negged because Art in Rumsfeld, all of them sort of like they're all like they're all like brothers. Like
Yeah,
they're
they're
they
mismatched as friends. They do
but
seem like brothers.
they
Yeah.
seem like weird brothers. So actually, I want to take it back a little. I
Oh
want
yeah,
to
go for it.
throttle it back a little bit. There's at the beginning of this movie, and this is why I really like get this movie. Besides watching it a billion times when I was in at home, uh, it is PG, so it was really easy to just plop a kid out in front of and watch.
For
Like there
sure.
isn't super. There's some scary bits, but nothing like over gross
It's
or sexual about it.
it's not the 80s PG where there's boobs, it isn't
Yeah, no,
airplane.
it's very
Yeah.
kind of tame.
Hmm.
But what got me first, that really got me in is when Art is telling them the serial killer story at the beginning. It's a warm night in
Yes.
summer. He's telling about what was his name? Forgot the story. But about a ice cream man who turned into a serial killer. About it's like an old urban legend in in this town, and it's just this quiet night in the middle of the suburbs. They're basically quote unquote around a campfire, telling spooky
Hmm.
stories, and there's this weird house across the way that every time they interact with it, something weird happens. nights.
Yep.
These weird omens happen, and they don't know what's up, and their minds and their imagination play with you because that story grips you. Like they
Yeah.
do such a good time delivering that story that you're like, oh, there are bad people in like places like this, and like
Exactly.
you kind of just
Yeah.
kind of
I mean, in the 70s and 80s, I think that's when things were really changing how people viewed suburbia. It used to be like, leave all your doors unlocked and your windows
hmm
open.
hmm
And around
they
this
may
time,
mention
that
that in the
was really
movie. They
changing.
absolutely
Yeah.
mention, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, this could happen here.
Yeah, and it's like, well, what are they doing over there? Have you really seen them? They seem to only come out at night, and they are constantly talking to each other about like, what have you seen? What have you not seen? And it's all about the suspect stuff of like, oh, our Ray sees them out in the backyard digging in the middle of a storm, and he's like, and he tells Art, and then Art like feeds all of this paranoia, and then they get the vet who's probably got his own issues.
Yeah, it does seem that way. Uh, yeah, the neighbor that I guess his wife's on vacation this whole time, right? We don't see her till the rest to the end of the movie
So the
part.
first part, they're together for a while. Like the
Okay.
first act or two, there because she makes comments about their shenanigans. She makes
Mm-hmm.
comments about them doing stuff because Art keeps showing up. Like, remember they're watching Jeopardy, and
Yes.
he like knocks on the door, and she's like, "We're watching the show. I don't want to
Oh
come
no, I
out and
mean
talk to you right
Art's
now."
wife.
Yeah, Art's wife
Oh,
is
okay.
gone. We
Yeah,
never
she's
see
gone.
her.
That's what I'm saying.
Sorry.
She shows up at the end, and that's why he keeps coming over, because she's not there to like cook for him and take care of him.
That's right. I forgot
So
forgot that she shows up at the end. I forgot about that
yeah,
because he
so
says my wife.
yeah, he's like, oh no, my wife's back,
Yeah.
because he was really enjoying that freedom. Except that he did keep coming over because he needed to be fed. He was
Yes, and
eating
it's
stuff
like,
out of their
and they
fridge
just
and
keep
stuff.
feeding him,
Yeah,
like,
they're like, oh, poor Art. He really can't do this on his own. But didn't
yep.
mean to derail that. I just thought that was
No,
funny.
no, that's it's real good. There's so many great little moments in this movie. Again, physical comedy, like we said. There's a lot of like, oh, guy slips on poop, oh, dog poop. Okay, that's funny. But there's also like the bee attack, where they actually try to
I love
like
the bee attack.
they also like negging. This is where they're like brothers because they're negging each other, going, "Oh, no, you do it. No, you fucking do it. No, you do it." And then they go up, they knock. Not only do they knock, and it turns into like 666
Yes.
for the thing. One of them falls through the through the. Oh
I
man,
think
my
it happens
brain is
twice,
fired.
like the floorboards
The
in the on
floorboard,
the
yeah, he
porch.
went through the
Yeah.
porch.
Yeah.
Falls through the bridge, and then they do it again, and then the bees that were nested or wasps that were nested inside the house come screaming out, and then there's more physical comedy with Rumsfeld getting the hose, and he like runs and just gets yanked by it because he goes too fast and it's
Yeah.
not long enough. It's just this great physical comedy that you don't get. Like, it's a classic physical comedy bit of
Agreed.
them just going, and then like the physical comedy later where they're like infiltrating the house and
Yes.
like putting their hands on the fence that's electrified and falling over. And then at the very end, I love reading this. Tom Hanks, I'll make another comment, improvised the scene where he picks up the gurney and puts himself
Yes.
into he improvised that. I was like,
It's
that's
such a funny
awesome.
moment. It's like
Yep.
a very like, I'm done. I'm getting out of here. Like,
I'm under arrest. I was
yeah.
wrong. This has all been like he's just like he's resigned to his fate because he's
Yeah.
just like, I'm screwed. I've done stupid stuff. And then the twist at the end happens.
Yes, which is wonderful.
hmm
Yeah.
I heard they did another ending.
Yeah, I didn't
where
watch.
they
I didn't
were
get a chance to watch it, but I saw on YouTube there's like an alternate ending.
Yeah, the older ending supposedly is the Klopek gets in the ambulance with Ray, and you don't know what happens after that. Like, it's never revealed if the Klopeks were really the people they thought they were. There was
Yeah,
no justification. It's supposed to be very nebulous.
I
And then they
see.
went back and shot a new one where they had closure. Like, no, the Klopeks are really evil. Like,
I
everything you
think
were.
it's funnier if you know that they're evil.
Yes. Like, they're comically evil.
Yeah.
Like, their trunk is full of bones evil. Like,
Yeah. But it is true, like the way he delivers those lines about like, oh, I know what you saw, like that is kind of
yeah.
it could end there, and you wouldn't know. So
Yeah,
that
that
way
was part
too.
of it, and I'm good. Also read up that most of this movie was improvised.
Oh, really? Well, that
There,
makes sense because a lot of it feels improvised. I think one of my favorite moments that it just stands out to me in this movie, I always think about it, is when they find that bone
hmm
and they're like, "This is Walter," and they're just like scream
yeah,
cam. It makes me laugh so hard every time. Like that one scene, like weirdly feels like more modern humor in that moment than the rest of it does. Maybe
actually,
because
that
it's
feels more
improv.
cartoony to me because of
It
the
is
back and
cartoony a
forth
little bit. Yeah,
camera,
yeah, yeah.
whoa, and they're just screaming.
It's just so silly. Like the thought of them just screaming.
Yeah, and like there's good moments where they keep they toe the line very neatly on a horror movie, but they
Yes.
always come back to the comedy and show you guys, this is us just poking fun and being weird. This
Yeah.
isn't like actual legit horror. Like
It feels safe.
it
Yeah.
feels very safe. It feels
Yeah.
very like decent like gentle horror, but it's super fun just to watch them just eat up the scenery with each other and just go around talking. Such a good movie.
It's
Sorry, I
so
know I've
good.
said that like 1,000 times
No,
already.
I agree. And I will say that, like I said, I saw this as a kid, which I'm kind of impressed that it kept my attention since it's like all adults pretty much
Yep.
except for Corey. But I guess it was just so zany and so physical that that's what kept
hmm
me going. But I was very afraid of Ray's dream where he's
Oh
on that.
yeah, I was hoping you would bring up the dream. The dream sequence is a little left field for this movie.
It is. It's
It's
kind of random.
it's very random, but it makes a lot of sense
Hmm.
because seeing that Ray's being really subconsciously affected by all the stuff that's going on,
Yeah.
all of Art's little paranoia. My favorite part, because I got to talk about it, is the line, the little song. Look, Ray, you're chanting. You're chanting. Satan is good. Satan is my pal. And
I
like
know.
that stuff is so
Like
just
that
so
gets quoted to
good.
this day. Yeah. But when he's on the barbecue, I remember I like started crying and my
Oh,
dad was like, he looked at me like, honey, like, do you not see how silly this is? It's a man on a barbecue, like on the barbecue we have outside, like on a grill. And I
that's
was
a
like,
really big barbecue. That's
so he was like, okay, fine. So we just fast forward that part, but
Aw.
but now it makes me laugh. And I remember like when I hadn't seen this for a long time, I was like, what was that movie I saw? I
Skip.
remember
That
it
was the
being
dude's name.
scary.
That was the
Oh,
serial
Skip.
killer's name. Skip. Because I remember
Skip.
he because they have actors from the movie playing people in his dream.
Oh,
Because
that's right. That's right.
he even makes it. Hey, hey, Ray, it's fine. It's me. It's me. Art. I'm playing Skip. Like he actually
Oh, yeah, yeah,
says it
yeah.
right to the camera.
That's so funny. Yeah. And I remember like vaguely remembering this movie and being like, but I remember it being scary, but then I was like, but then I remember someone on a grill. And then I was like, it must have been a comedy and it just scared me. And that's like that was the journey to like
Yep.
uncovering this childhood memory and having to buy the movie to rewatch it. So
Yeah. It's
it,
yeah.
it ages well.
Yeah,
So
I'm super happy you mentioned the dream because the dream
yes.
sequence is left field, but it's very cool. It just shows it's a little scary at the beginning because it's like there's like a chainsaw in the middle of his
Yeah.
bed because he thinks he's fallen asleep with his wife. All this other stuff. Also, notice definitely 80s. Like the married couple's bed is the same bed. Like it
Yes,
is there in the
true.
bed
We're
together.
past, Lucille Ball era,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I'm trying to what else? Ricky's an interesting character, Corey Feldman's character,
Yes.
because he's just like a summer kid painting a house. And
Right. I guess
but
he doesn't live there. He just likes being there, or does
I
he live
think
there?
he must live close.
No one claims him,
No, he's not anyone's kid. He just is there
Just
and his
there.
friends show up and he's watching the doings of these weirdos.
Yeah, he's less interested in his teenage life. He's more interested in this like wacky adult world that he gets to watch as a sideshow.
Because
And
he
it
sees
eventually wants to be like in the crew and a part of, which is
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
too.
Because he likes like filming because like Art seems like that cool uncle that you want to have.
Yeah.
It's just that uncle that will let you do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. He feels like an adult. And then when he has that girlfriend over and he's like narrating
Yeah,
everything to her and she's getting invested too. It's like
yeah.
turning into a reality show.
Oh,
It's
don't go
great.
anywhere. Pizza due to be here in 10 minutes.
Yes. And by the time I saw this movie, obviously I was like very into like the Goonies and
Mm-hmm.
just all the Stand By Me, like all the movies that had Corey in it. So I was
Yep.
very invested.
Yep. Oh man.
Yeah,
So what
what are
else you want?
some Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, what are some other scenes? I feel like we've kind of jumped into
Yeah, we've
just
been
our
jumping around a
favorite
lot, but
scenes.
there's so
Yeah,
many good scenes.
there
We talked
are.
about the opening scene. We talked about that. Um, Actually, what's interesting, I think, is we never get a real good explanation of why Ray took the week off of work. Like, what's going on there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't dude from the '80s. You just don't take a week off randomly. Because I read some trivia that one of the sort of the background story beats that wasn't really explained was that Ray didn't want to tell his family he was fired from his job, and that's kind of why he's
Oh,
around and he's not doing much. He doesn't seem very focused.
that's a good point. Because narratively, I was like, if they're not going to copy the Rear Window model, then he didn't break his leg. He's not
Right.
stuck at home, so they have to come up with some other reason why he would be at home for a week. And I
Yep.
think I assumed like, oh, it's one of those things where you like bought a house and can't really afford to go on vacation. But it is interesting that his wife and his kids aren't really a part of these plans. So that does kind of lend itself more to like, because otherwise it would be like, this is a family week, but it's
Yeah.
weird. It's not, I don't know. Is it the summer in this movie
Yes,
or
it is
okay, it
because
is. So they would
Art
be out of
tells about
school, I
it's
guess.
he
Yeah,
mentions because the skip story talks about a night like this. He talks
I
about
see.
like the warmness of the weather and that
Okay.
it's obviously the summer and like this is all why Ricky is paying the house and he's not in school during and why his kid is not in school either. Like
That's
his
right.
kid's not
That
going to
makes
school.
sense.
Yeah.
And it's also like it would have to be like it couldn't be because it's not supposed to be in LA. Like even though it's filmed in like an LA studio lot,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be in Chicago because I read some of the police cars say that.
Yep.
And again, very 80s. Everything is
Yeah.
in Chicago in the 80s.
Yeah, like a
So
their meeting with the like actual Klopex, like to go introduce him, is always fun, just because of how grim and terrible their house is. Like
right,
you're
it's like
like,
falling apart.
yeah, everyone's like, this, you all are gross. Like,
It's like you live here physically, like very haunted, very like hoarder sort of situation. Yeah, it's bad.
mhm. Another thing we can talk about, this was a little more of a deeper dive. Like, if you want to go like a little meta with it and like
Go for
say
it.
breaking it down. It's as I said, it was a parody, and it's also sort of a satire, an examination of suburban life, because this is about paranoia about the other,
Oh, for
and
sure.
like you have like the invasion of the Klopeks, and well, Klopek could be from anywhere, but it could stand for like many different groups, uh,
Exactly. The fact that they're foreign.
oppressed groups, minority
Yeah,
groups, being injecting themselves into what people think is normal and regular, like a regular
exactly.
family, like a
Yeah.
picket fence, the whole deal, and then these weirdos show up, and
Hmm.
there's no woman with them. There's not a wife or daughter or mother, nothing. Just men, because you have the grandfather, the son, and then Luke's probably the grandson, which is Hans.
Oh yeah. That's a
And
good point. And their biggest crime at first is just standing out and
right,
doing
100%.
vaguely weird things which are not criminal, and then looking for criminality in everything that they do. And it could have ended with them finding nothing wrong with them and they all wasted all their time,
Hmm.
punishing this group of people just because they were strange and they didn't want them in their neighborhood. So I
Yeah,
could definitely see that.
that's where if you've never seen the movie and you're watching and you're being honest and you're following the story, you're like, are are they really evil? Because the movie is telegraphing you all the way, is
Yeah,
trying to say these are evil people. But if they didn't show you, validate you at the end, you don't actually know. They never explain it, and that's all like cinema language filtering into your brain.
For sure. And I mean, they're terrorizing them because, like,
Yes.
when they come over for the wives are like, let's talk to them, like, let's have a dialogue instead of like what you guys are doing, sneaking around and like invading their privacy. But then it quickly turns into the older friend, the vet guy, like interrogating them
Hmm.
and insisting on stuff and demanding to see certain things. It's like totally inappropriate. And then later, like even trying to cut their power line to get them to leave the house, like all that.
Yeah.
If they're wrong, they're literally just terrorizing them.
Yeah, I want to know more about the scene because the impetus for the big like invasion scene at the end, towards the end, and like the digging is Ray finds the toupee that was Walter that he put back in the house,
Yes.
and it's like I wonder if they went back and reshot that scene when they changed the ending or not, because
Uh,
that is a little bit of evidence in their favor at towards the end of the movie that something's going on.
sure, except that Walter was alive, right? Or does he die when he comes back?
Yes, but the question is, so they find Walter is in the hospital. They go into Walter's house because Weenie the dog was not taken care of. So
Yeah,
they were wondering what happened to Walter. Signs, quote unquote, signs of a struggle. They go inside. They find Walter's toupee,
that's
and
right.
then when he
But then
makes
they
the
make that
letter,
comment, old people wear toupees.
you're right,
Yeah.
and then yeah, and then they when he writes the letter, he thrusts the toupee back through the mail slot. So it's inside the house, and then he later in the movie finds the toupee in the Klopex.
But is it his toupee or is it that old people have toupees in the
I don't
people's house that they
know.
took
Actually, good.
over?
I
Because
never thought
it's
about
like
it
that
like
would
that.
make sense if it really was Walter's because Walter's fine.
Yeah, well, that's weird. Then
So
I got
weird.
suckered into this movie too for 20
Well,
odd years.
well then, so what the answer could be, I mean, at the end, the Klopeks admit to they tried to buy the house from somebody. They didn't want to sell it to them, so they killed them. He said, you know how old people can be. So it's probably another old person's toupee.
Yeah, that's true. This could be just because they also look like hoarders, regardless of what they're doing. They
Yeah.
obviously collect a lot of weird things, so it could have just been a toupee.
Yeah.
But
And maybe their victims toupee that.
yeah, or it's like, oh, it's a toupee, and they just assumed it was Walter's because it looked a
Yeah.
lot like Walter's toupee, and their own paranoid brain just went collect the dots
Well, I
and
mean, none
say,
of them look like they would be wearing a toupee, so
sure,
it's valid, weird thing that he found,
yeah,
for sure. But yeah, it sort of through his own suspicion, validating him, he ended up being right, just not about what he thought it was about.
right,
Yeah,
because they're not good at what they're doing at
yeah.
all
So
on any level.
the model that these Klopeks have, I guess, at the end is that they invade people's homes, kill them, and bury them. But it seemed like there were so many bones in that trunk, so they must do that a lot.
Well,
So
one of the things is like they sort of see them like in the backyard, like they're
yeah.
burying in the backyard. They want to go undig a backyard. Oh no, the first one is they see Hans like over and over like jam this trash bags into the trash can.
Oh, that's right. That's
They
right.
think they're
Yeah, and they
bodies,
go through
and
them the next day. Yeah.
then the next day they do the whole thing. They're like, oh, they must have switched it in the middle of the night. Then they see him like doing something in the backyard because his son says, sometimes I see them in the backyard. Um, and so that's why they want to go in there and they try to dig up the backyard to see if they can find bones. I think what it is that they obviously burn them up because
Yeah.
they have the whole furnace thing, and then they just collect them in the car, like
Yeah.
as just a way of, because if you don't look in the car, you're not going to find anything.
For sure. For sure.
Because part of the
And
way
it's so
through,
many. Like, how many people were living there?
there's only 3 of them.
Oh, okay. I think maybe my mind was just.
Yeah, as
It's
far as I
kind of a
know, there's
shocking
only
scene.
3 of them. The Klopex, there's only 3 of them. But you're right, there are like multiple
Yeah.
multiple
Like,
people
this
for the
seems to
bones
be a
in that.
pattern for them. I think that they've been to more than one house, and yeah, they're finally getting caught. So
Yeah, and
I love when they're like, "Is that your car?" And he's just kind of like, just kind of shrugs, like, "Nah, I guess it
I
is."
guess it is.
He's like, no comment. It's just funny. Yeah, this movie is so good. It has so many perfect moments for
Oh
sure.
yeah, it has tons of perfect little moments, things you'll remember. I'm trying to remember all the little things because there's a lot of other like little slices of life moments.
Yes.
Like when he's talking with his son and Art, they're like, "Hey, you gonna do anything with the ball? You gonna watch the ball game? Or are you gonna build something? You gonna work on your garage? That kind of stuff."
Yeah, it's very like, again, very suburban. Like,
Very very
watch the
suburban.
game. He's like, "Oh, let me show you my new tools."
Yep.
When I
Yeah.
watch it now, I'm like, "Oh man, this is where I'm at in this role for
Oh, trust
sure."
me, I don't. I unfortunately I don't own my house. I rent my house, but I have lived for a couple of years. Lived here for a couple of years now, and I definitely have become like a handyman. I've worked on several projects around the house and outside the house, and it's what you do.
Yeah, and you brag about like, "Oh, I bought these tools," or, "Oh, I'm
Uh,
working on this project."
yeah,
It's,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
that's your new fun
yeah.
for sure.
Oh, getting old. Oh
Oh,
no.
so fun, so
Yeah.
fun. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've touched the biggest highlights unless you can think of another. There's so many
Not
good scenes.
really. I'm trying to remember because again, unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it before we recorded, so I'm going off like raw memory. But that's why every so often my brain fires and I remember something important
That's
about the
fine.
movie.
I mean, when you've seen it enough times, it's you don't have to rewatch it.
Oh yeah, we should
Um,
talk. We should talk real quickly because I'm going to look it up real quick. The score, the
oh,
score of this
okay.
movie, it's really kind of iconic. Like it's
Yeah, it's
it's
very cinematic for what the content is, I guess, to sort of evoke the fact that it's a little bit of a parody.
yeah, it's a little over the top. But it's notable and it definitely highlights every scene. It does its job very well. But I just really enjoyed. I remember even to this day, while I cannot remember the actual like melody, I'm like, oh, the soundtrack was very interesting for a
Yeah,
movie like this.
it looks like the music was done by Jerry Goldsmith.
Hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Oh, like The Omen. Yeah, the pretty important guy.
Yeah, he did, and also he invokes good fear. Like
Yeah,
some of it's very
Alien.
playful, but
Yeah.
all of it's a little sinister. Like on the other
Yes.
end.
I love that they went with that, like they really took the music part of it seriously, whereas like the rest of it's sort of lighter in tone. Yeah,
Absolutely.
very cool. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. Have we missed anything?
I can't
I kind of
think
went
of
through all my
any.
notes.
Oh no.
No, it's fine. I mean,
Let's.
the movie is, let's see. I mean, it's a comedy, so it is an hour and 42 minutes.
Hmm.
Like pretty much a perfect
Yeah, like
amount of time, I think.
there's no fat on this movie.
No,
There's never a moment where a scene feels dead, or if it lingers, it's lingering there for a reason. Like,
agreed. And even like the little tiny quick moments are done so well, like we mentioned already with the garbage men, they're not just anybody, they're like two extremely funny people.
yeah,
So like nothing is wasted, like even the smaller parts
yeah.
are really
Oh,
good.
another little factoid that I really loved that I was doing a little research was because of the writer's strike, they couldn't have writers on the set, so he hired one of the writers as an actor, so he could go. The
Oh,
direct Joe Dante could go talk to him about the movie because he wasn't trying to break the strike, but he needed to get the movie done. Um, but one of the things that the film was filmed in sequence, like
that's true.
so from
Good
beginning
point.
to end. So
Yeah.
normally you film what you need to film when you can do it with the script. Where this is like if they're improving a lot, they're building the characters as they go.
Yeah, good point.
So all the evolution of sort of the interactions are very natural because
Hmm.
everything is in order. Yeah, this is just one of those like 80s classics. Like
Yeah.
um
We've
it
been doing
just
a lot of those lately, and I'm here for it. I love
yeah,
it.
absolutely. They're fantastic.
Yeah,
This is
go ahead.
one I think one of those low key gems. Like
Agreed.
most people don't know about it, but
Especially
anyone
if you're
who's seen it
younger, like in your
loves it.
20s. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people haven't. Like when you mentioned, probably because it's not that accessible. Um, but like a lot of people haven't seen it. So this is a good one to check out if you're looking for something from the 80s that's a little bit under the radar in terms of like in a list of classics, not always highlighted, but definitely very appreciated.
Oh yeah, 100%. You won't have a bad time if you watch this movie.
Yeah. Well,
Straight up.
that brings me to my last couple of questions, which we've kind of already answered it. But to summarize, Why does this movie stand out so much to you? Why do you think you saw it so many times as a kid and, continue to enjoy it as an adult?
Um, it's an easy watch, but why it stuck with me is just because I watched it a lot as a kid. I mean, as I said, it's an easy thing to watch. Give like a 12-year-old. You can plop him down. He'll watch the movie. You won't bother your parents. He'll laugh. He'll have a good time. It's a little silly. It's a little bit of adventure. It's a little bit of an adventure to it,
Yeah, for sure.
and it's honestly funny. It's
Yes.
honestly funny, and it sticks with you. So that's why it has stuck with me for so long. I've watched it when I'm older, when I'm like, I need a good laugh, or I need something's going on in my life, and I just need to relax. Put on Burbs. All right, Tom Hanks being funny, everyone else being hilarious, just doing cool stuff. Just having a good time.
Yeah, I think like I watched it a lot as a kid and I just found it funny. I don't think we even lived in a house when I watched it. I was so
Mm.
little. But now that I am older and I relate even more to the characters, it's like even funnier to watch it in your 30s because you're
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh man, this is like me. Like whether
yeah.
you own a home or not, I don't know, the nosiness, the sticking around your house all the time or apartment, it's very real. I think
Oh,
life slows down at that point.
to sort of expand on that question, I remember watching the movie when I was younger and not really getting the whole Skip story, like
Mm.
understanding the context of what he
Same.
was really talking about. And then when I was older and I watched it, like we're talking from 12 to like 17 or something, getting, oh, he's talking about like a serial killer, like
Yeah,
in
like
this
child
town.
abductor. Yeah.
Yeah, like somebody, your next door neighbor could be a murderer and you don't
Yeah.
know it.
Exactly. Like giving him that permission to push his paranoia over the edge and like really judge somebody because it could be anybody. But yeah, as
Right.
a kid, I think when he talked about that, I was like, urban myth didn't happen. And as an adult, I'm like, it
It just
probably
didn't, I
did.
didn't understand. I thought it was just like, oh, he's just telling him a weird story. Like I physically didn't
Yeah.
understand it. Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's
That's
just part of the movie.
interesting.
You're talking about this guy named Skip. Somebody murdered somebody. Okay. When you're older, you're like, oh
You're
no.
like, oh God. You were like looking around now, like, should I spy on my neighbors? Yeah. So the other thing I was going to ask you is how do you pitch this to someone that maybe hasn't had a chance to check this movie out yet?
Ooh, good question. That's to sum it up, because as this conversation everyone has heard, it's very scatterbrained and all over the place. Um, do you like? Hmm. Do you like? Do you like goofy slapstick horror without being grating? I would say,
Yeah, like
like,
have you seen Nothing But Trouble, but you had
mm-hmm.
a hard time getting through it? This is
Ooh,
like a
ooh. Good
tight
thing I didn't
version of a
suggest
movie
that
like
movie.
that.
Oh, be thankful I didn't. I've seen that one a couple
I
times.
have to. It's like that like gave me nightmares.
Yeah, dude, that's a movie.
It's a
Like
rough watch.
I've been wanting to dig up, like find a copy of that and watch it because it's been a long time. Whoo, that's a rough one.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but this one is just a solid. Like if I really did, I'd probably just say it's solid, funny slapstick classic. Like just straight up, you will have a good time. You grab a couple beers, grab your friends, even watch it with your family. Actually, I think
Yeah,
it may
you
be even
can.
funnier to watch it with your family.
I think it is funnier because, they'll relate to it more. I think it'll jog their memory too. And, I think like, I mean, Tom Hanks is amazing, right? But I
Mm,
think nowadays we kind of think of him as like Forrest Gump and on, where he's kind of turned into sort of like this lovable, sincere person in every movie, Mr. Rogers and, things like that. It's fun to go back and see his like Joe the Volcano days,
hmm Oh,
like
that's another movie I could talk about because I remember
yeah,
watching Joe the Volcano
it's
many
a great
times.
movie, but
Yeah,
it's like introducing someone to like this era of Tom Hanks,
yeah,
like this
this
would
is
be a good
definitely, as we
introduction.
said, and then you made a great observation. This was sort of the birth into more of the modern, older Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
where he's less like sort of the weird, like the leading man, but he's getting more into his comedy. Like
Yeah.
he's really embracing his comedy. until he does like all the Da Vinci Code stuff, which is still good.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I love that. But yeah, exactly. So it's like it's kind of cool for people, especially if they're younger, to maybe get to see like a different side to that actor, that he had phases, to his career. And
absolutely.
Cool. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated having you back again. I keep saying it, but I really enjoy this film. I'm glad you picked it, and I feel like I learned more about it through talking to you about it. So
I'm
yeah.
glad I can finally talk to someone else who enjoys this movie as much as, because I've told people about the Burbs, and some people, my friends, have never seen it, and it's one of those like could never get them around to watch it, and like just getting someone who can relate to it.
Yes, it's like if you get it, you get it. I mean,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think, yeah.
Now we got to go watch it, but I'm just sad that I just can't. I don't own a copy.
I know. I've never made a rule. Like I've had people send me DVDs because things are so hard to watch. So I've never turned any movie selection down. I almost feel like it's a challenge.
Yeah,
So I challenge the listeners to go track this down.
But it's not hard. It's not like it's not like
check out your local movie trading company or something.
Yeah, you should be able to get it. But it's definitely worth it. Worth your time, worth your money. But thank you very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed talking about the Burbs. I'm happy to come back on and talk about anything else. I love talking about movies. I don't get to do it enough.
Awesome. Yeah. Hope to have you back soon.
Yes, no problem. Thank you very much. Everyone be good.